Good Company Podcast. Rick Karle, Matt Coulter, Lars Anderson, our guest today, Mike Lutzenkirchen. Michael, how you doing? All right?
Guys, I'm doing great. Good to be in Birmingham on my way to Tuscaloosa for a 2-day conference and then head up to South Carolina to host an event on Thursday.
You know, you have been a busy guy. It's been 11 years now since you lost your son, Philip. And we'll go all through that. But for 11 years, you're pounding the pavement, aren't you? That's your mission.
It's when you get stats out that there's 40,000 lost lives on U.S. highways or U.S. roadways every year. The definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over and expect different results. So touching a lot of different people and a lot of different organizations trying to reduce that number.
A lot of people are going to, just some questions from me here. A lot of people, first of all, are going to be watching Good Company, and they're going to want to know why the logo.
Well, this logo is because I'm a Falcons fan. I like the style of the shirt, and it's amazing how many comments I get on it. But the real reason is I don't have to tuck it in because I'm fat.
Yeah.
Hardly.
Leave it outside.
So,
join the crew.
Stand up. I think they're all in.
Yeah.
The other question is Lutzenkirchen. Where's that? What's the origin? Is it German?
It's German,
Yeah.
and I think we've got it right. It's somewhere along the lines of light of the church. So,
Oh, cool.
last name's
awesome.
Lutzenkirchen, 13 letters. A good college teammate of mine is Dan Oberbrockling, 14 letters. And when people ask us, because we work the same job at a college, these names have to be made up. And no, and then they'd ask what's the origin, and he would say light of the brothel, which it's not light of the
That's
brothel.
not
It's light of the church.
That's not the original meaning.
I believe Lutzenkirchen is the longest last name in Auburn football history.
It is. You know, when they reduced the font size to put it on Philip's jersey, is people were complaining that they were going to do it to everybody's last name, and his was the only one they reduced in the font size. So I think it's still the longest last name in Auburn
Well, you
football.
see him, it goes from shoulder pad to shoulder pad on the back.
Yeah, one of the favorite shirts we saw while he played there, somebody came up with it, Lutzenkirchen is German for touchdown maker. So
There you go.
we used to enjoy that.
Yeah. So you and Mary raised the kids, Ann, Amy, Abby, Philip, Marietta, Georgia, right? He went to Lassiter,
Correct.
big tight end. Now, did you play football? You're a big guy.
I played football through high school and then focused on basketball in college. So.
Okay, gotcha. And, he took off. He was an athlete. Tell me about what kind of athlete he was and, some of the sports he played at Lassiter and how he ended up at Auburn.
Yeah, I think he went the traditional route. Back when I was in high school, right, you kind of played football, basketball, and baseball, and he did all those till about he was 8 when he got hit in the back 3 times in one Little League game. And said, I'm done playing baseball. So he just focused on basketball and football. And I think it was his sophomore year in high school, he decided, I'm not going to probably be much bigger than 6'4", 6'5". There's not many places on a basketball court for me for that. So that's when he really said he was going to just focus on football. But he played basketball through 4 years of high school, had a nice career, had a few lower-level D1 offers. But football is where he really enjoyed.
Did Malzahn come a-calling? Is that what happened?
Yeah, it's funny that transition was Philip committed to Tuberville because he liked Tony Franklin's system back then, and Tony got fired after 6 games that year, and so he never played for Tuberville because Tuberville then lost the job. So Gene made it his last stop. When the recruiting period was, I think, stopped December 20th back in those days. His last stop was to see Philip because there was rumors he was going to go elsewhere. And then Gus made it his first stop. So Gus had dinner with us that night on his first trip recruiting an Auburn player.
So I guess Philip was impressed, right?
He was. He wasn't. He went and looked at Florida State and Tennessee, Florida, and we looked at Bama. But he was dead set on going to Auburn. He just fell in love with it.
By the end of his time at Auburn, Philip had more followers on social media than any other player on the team, which is a reflection of his popularity. Why do you think the Auburn fans gravitated so much to your son?
There's the Auburn creed. I've never learned to recite it, quite frankly, but we've got more compliments that he just was an Auburn man. I think it's how he carried himself. If you went to his memorial service where there was 3,500 people that showed up at Lassiter, most of his teammates that came were upperclassmen that he played with, so that were juniors and seniors when he was a freshman. I think he just had a good balance of understanding the pecking order and followed it, but his sisters would disagree with this, but he didn't have that many bad days. He had bad moments like all of us, but he just kind of would walk in a room and he'd make you guys feel like you were the purpose of this podcast. he just had that trait, and I give the credit to my wife Mary for that
Yeah,
DNA he had.
I remember talking to him a few different times after games, and he was always smiling, and he was just radiating a light and a warmth. I remember, I wrote a long story, and we spent a lot of time together for that piece many years ago. But that Philip, did things like take a handicapped girl.
Took a classmate of his that was the same age, Casey Carroll, who had Down syndrome. So she was in high school, and took her to prom after he was finishing up his freshman year at Auburn. He went back. There's all kinds of stories. He took a young man named Evan Thomas, who he met, and had him come, I think it was when they played Mississippi State his sophomore year, to the team hotel in Montgomery, just because he was a huge Auburn fan. And I think Evan passed away like 3 weeks later from cancer. So he just had this canny ability to say, I just want to love on these kids, and nobody's got time. Doesn't take any talent, doesn't take any treasure. He just did it.
He also became quite fun. Popular with Auburn fans because he scored more touchdowns than any tight end in the history of War Eagle, and that'll make you popular.
That probably helps.
Yeah.
Right? And I always joke, and Gus probably doesn't like this, but he would have caught a lot more if they threw to him more often. But
and I'm sure he would.
He had some big key touchdowns his sophomore and junior year.
Well, do you remember his biggest? Does he a few that he actually will tell in stories?
And back the Lutzy.
Well, it's funny. So he had the game-winning touchdown in the 2010 Iron Bowl, and that's a great story for us because Abby, our daughter, his only younger sister, was being recruited at the time, and she had verbally committed to play soccer at Alabama. So instead of sitting up at the very top of the one end zone, which they put the visitor fans at Alabama, we actually sat in the student-athlete recruiting zone. So we were like the 30-yard line, 40 rows off the field, and we got down to the fence after that game, and Philip came up and hugged Mary and Abby through the fence, and I just said, man, that was a great catch, but it wasn't really that hard, was it? And he just kind of looked at me and said, I don't know, 105,000 people, and floated in the air for like an hour. Dad, did you ever play in front of this side of the crowd? And I said, good, touche, good point. So that was a big one, but his best one to me was the one-handed catch he made his junior year where the ball was thrown behind him against Ole Miss, and in one motion caught it one-handed, switched to the left, and dove in to beat the pylon and beat a defender. So that was probably his most athletic touchdown.
Pretty amazing. He's always been a young man of faith too. I mean, he's not afraid to, thank the Lord and give credit where credit is due too. And I think that's part of his popularity.
Well, I think he had the ability not to make his faith dominant portion of the conversation, but he certainly didn't hide it and let people know it's important.
Yeah. Made you feel good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Made you feel
absolutely just a portrait of the all-American kid, a really wonderful young man with a limitless future, and that is what makes what transpired so jarring. And Mike, I've always been so impressed with you about when you go around the country and you speak, you do not sugarcoat anything. I've been in the room when you have just you're holding 1,000 high school students just absolutely spellbound because you are giving graphic details of the worst day of your life. And I hate to ask you to go back to it, but can you go back to it for us? And just what do you remember about, like what Philip's plans were for the day and what the actual date was, and just kind of set the scene for us?
Yeah, he's to set that up, I guess, a little bit. He went to Auburn because he fell in love. His goal was to go to the NFL, like most kids that play at that level. Had a great chance. He was told after his junior year when Gene Chizik submitted his name to the NFL Advisory Board, if he came out, he'd probably be around a third-round draft pick. I tell this to kids all the time. I just talked to Georgia Tech football a week ago, and at his time, he would have played 5.5 years in the league as a tight end versus the 3.4 average career, and he would have been a millionaire, and he turned it down. He was pretty excited. Gus had taken another job, Arkansas State. Not that he wanted Gus to leave, but they were bringing in Scott Loeffler, who was going to use pro terminology, which he thought would set him up for the NFL. And he thought he could win the John Mackey Award. And he thought Auburn could win a national championship. Well, they ended up going 2-12. His senior year, he had 2 significant injuries. He only got to play 6 weeks, and then they shut him down. But so he took a job in Montgomery, Alabama. He was a communications journalism major, and he calls and says, "Dad, I just took a job in wealth management." And I'm like, "Well, that sounds about par for the course for you, Philip. Do you understand the Series 7 and all these tests you're going to have to take?" He says, "Don't worry about it. I got it." And he got a chance to coach some football down there. Jimmy Perry was the coach down there at St. James at the time. I found out Phil was right around the corner, so Phil did some volunteer coaching. I think that's the route he was going to go. He wanted, I think, go impact the high school kids. I think he would end up being a high school teacher and coach and so forth. But we did not know where he was that fateful weekend. And that Sunday morning, we went to Mass. It was June 29th of 2014. Abby, our youngest, actually was playing a semi-pro type soccer game in Jacksonville, Florida as a rehab opportunity because she had an ankle surgery. She's going to go back to her second year at Alabama. But we came home from Mass that morning with Mary in the front seat next to me and 2 older girls behind me, and Mary noticed on our front door what turned out to be a Post-it note. And God's got a plan, right? I haven't figured everything out, but this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now at this stage, and didn't know what it was. And then I told the girls, "Where was Philip last night?" And the kids always had good grasp of where everybody was, very tight. And both girls gave me an amazing answer. They didn't know. Mm-hmm. And I think they probably started to get on their phone and text some people. Well, Mary met us in the house by then, and she had this Post-it note, and it simply had a 706 area code, which I knew was LaGrange, Georgia area, and knew it wasn't good. Knew it wasn't about Abby, and didn't know where Philip was. And we found out after the fact that he had gone to a farm in LaGrange with about 12 other kids, and they were told to get there about 10, bring what you want to eat and drink because there's nothing open. And we're going to leave like at 5 o'clock. And the reality, after the fact, we never met any of these other 12 kids. He just had so many friends. So we heard there were kids from UGA there and Ole Miss and some other schools. They drank throughout the day, and he rode a horse. He got to go mudding. But I called that number. I say this every talk I give. Mary's standing here. The girls are here out on our deck this beautiful sunny morning. It's now probably about 10:30. And the gentleman that answered the phone said, "Sir, I need you to take another number." And I said, "I'm not taking down another number. What's going on?" He said, "Sir, you need to take down another number." And I got a little combative with him and said, "I'm not taking down another number." And then reluctantly, I repeated 10 numbers out loud so the girls could give them back to me. And I made the second dial. And this time was the coroner of Troup County. And he just simply said, "Mr. Lutzenkirchen," I knew when you can say that last name clean. He said, "There was a crash last night and Philip is dead." I mean, as a matter of fact as can be, and you watch Mary drop to her knees, and our daughter Amy screamed at the top of her lungs so loud that our next door neighbor, Bob and Terry Fitzgerald, Terry came running over, and Ann just turned whiter than, the whitest clean T-shirt. And you're sitting there and you're like, you start crying and sobbing and all that, but then you realize all of a sudden, about 10 minutes later, I guess it was, is that Abby's sitting on this bus coming back from Jacksonville, Florida. She works for our foundation now, doing incredible things, but she could be here. And
she idolized her brother.
Oh, yeah. It was, and I tell people all the time, I just spoke up in Naperville, Illinois last week, and you tell these kids, you think there's rivalries up here. I grew up in Chicago, so Bears and Bears used to be a rival with some teams, but Bears and Packers are Cubs and Cardinals. But this Auburn, Alabama thing, and even though they played different sports and boy and a girl, no pro sports here, it was this rivalry, but she just looked up that was her big hero.
She was his baby sister.
Yep. And again, kind of off track from it, all 3 of our girls reacted differently to his death and ultimately to the foundation. But our daughter Amy just wanted to go. Anybody that disparaged him online with, well, he must have been a drunk, or he must have done this, or must have done that, she just wanted to go find him and choke him out. And our daughter Ann, the middle one, has got just sweetheart. She said, "Why did he do what he did? He didn't do dumb things like that. Why?" And then Abby, who might have the deepest faith of the 3 girls, she just right away questioned where was God and all this thing. But she was on that bus, and I called her, and she would tell you, he didn't ask me the normal questions of, did you win? Did you score? Did you lead? How did your surgically repaired ankle hold up? I only knew one other girl because these are just a bunch of girls coming together, kind of playing one game of rehab, I guess. And I asked, where was Tess? And she was across the aisle, and asked her where the coach was. I assumed he was up front, didn't even know who the coach was or by name, and she walked the phone up there, and I had to say to this coach, I said, Coach, I apologize. I don't know your name, but, my son's dead, and you got to watch my baby girl. She's on that bus for about 4 hours without I don't think anybody loved her. And I just, again, God's plan is right. Why a Post-it note? Why not? Why did the trooper not wait for an hour to knock on our door? What's really cool in the story is Captain Maurice Range with the Georgia State Patrol was, I think, the commander or the leader down in that area of the state, and he sent the trooper up. And here we now are 11 years later. We're dear friends because we do these 5-hour safe driving summits in the state of Georgia, and he delivers the law enforcement portion of this. And every time he addresses an audience, he apologizes that trooper had left that Post-it.
Really?
Yeah, and I said, Maurice, it's part of the story. It's part of the impact that we're making. Again, I don't know why it happened that way, but I think it's more powerful than had we got the knock on the door. And I can imagine knocking on somebody's door to tell them.
Can't imagine
that. But that's how we found out.
And when you relayed the news to Abby.
Yeah, I Lars, I don't remember, quite frankly. It was just everything was just a blur on. I don't know. I just remember you try to be the rock, the father, the husband, right? And at times, I tell people all the time, because I get a call or an email every other week to Mike, you need to call this person because I just lost a child or this or that, and I've got my own set of rules on how I handle that. But I just no, I can't even remember I think I finally went by myself a couple hours later and just thought about Abby sitting on this bus. And where we live, a lot of us are trans, came out from other areas of the country where we live, but Bill and Lori Butler, dear friends, we call them family. That's who we spend the holidays with because our family's all up north. But Lori and Bill went and got Abby wherever the bus location was when they got into Atlanta. And I do vividly remember her walking up the driveway, just running, and all of us meeting her, hugging her.
Well, that's a tough. Mike, I just wanted to drill down a little bit on the circumstances of the accident because I think it's pertinent. We can get a visual. They're at LaGrange, 29th. What was it, late at night? And a bunch of kids jumped in a vehicle, decided to go to a convenience store, a gas station, get some chewing tobacco or whatever. Philip was in the back seat, unbuckled.
Yeah,
if you could go through that.
Yeah, what we were told is he went to a farm. And they drank throughout the day, and he stepped outside at like 2:30 in the morning with a friend of his who was a girl, and the guys backed up in the driveway in an SUV and said, hey, we're just, running down here. There's a 24/7 gas station convenience store in this rural area, winding roads, no stoplights, no street lights, quite frankly, in this area. And, I did see a surveillance camera. Police asked me to watch, and his friend did go in there and got the can of dip. His wife wanted to go out. All 4 kids were drunk.
Can you see Philip in the surveillance camera?
Nope, nothing. He just saw the kid in the counter, and he obviously got back in that vehicle. And we started our foundation with the mantra of live like Lutz, love like Lutz, and lead like Lutz. And man, we were off and running about 2 weeks after we came out of this black hole to say we got to do something with this platform he created. But the reality of it is about 6 to 7 weeks after he passed away. I mean, it was a Google alert. It was a USA Today piece. It was on ESPN. Auburn's Lutzenkirchen's BAC, blood alcohol content level, which in almost every state in the country is 0.08. You're considered legally intoxicated. Phillips was 0.377. We didn't get a phone call
Mike,
from the police.
Can you share how your wife found out about it?
Yeah. Mary was at the hospital. She's worked at Kennestone Wellstar Hospital for 28 years as a RN on an elective surgery floor, and she walked into a patient's room and saw it on the ESPN ticker.
I think that opened up to a lot of unnecessary criticism. The fact of the matter is they were intoxicated. Tragedy occurred.
Yep. Yeah, I've been blessed over the course I've done now. I've lost track. It's 450, 500 talks, something like that. Who knows the audience size? I think it's over 400,000 people. From second grade all the way up to 65 and older. And I think I can count on 5 hands where somebody came up real close to me and said something totally inappropriate.
Ooh.
One of them was at a church fundraiser of all places, and I think it was in Iowa, and a guy just came up and said, your son was a drunk.
Oh,
as people want to shake my hand after giving a talk at a church fundraiser. And tried to remain cool. I just finally.
It's awful hard there, Mike.
Well, I was giving some looks to some police that were there and said, please, you want to get him away. But here's what I find out. He was venting to me because his son is a drunk and has almost lost his life a couple times. Mm-hmm. So I put it into context. I don't think my son was a drunk. I think my son did something I've probably done multiple times when I was that age, and God wasn't ready for me, I guess, because I survived the dumb things I did. We're all human. We make mistakes. I tell everybody, my son was incredible, but he was like everybody else. He was a sinner. We all sin. Yeah, that Abby walking up the driveway and Rick, these 4 kids got in this vehicle, and I tell this all the time because it's the truth. Mary and I took 2 years before we went to the crash site in LaGrange. And we got there, and shallow ravine, at the end of a stop sign, you go right or left, very shallow ravine, and there's a church. And the accident report says the vehicle missed the stop sign, the driver, and they hit that ravine at like 77 miles an hour, according to the black box. And then the reenactment was it went over the back end over the front and rolled over the passenger side, the top, the driver's side, the bottom, 450 feet through the air. The young man, all 4 kids were drunk, but by law, I guess in Georgia or that county, they only reported the deceased blood alcohol content levels, and the driver was more than 2 times legally intoxicated. And I'll tell you what, guys, I have just been so blessed that my son wasn't in the driver's seat. I'm not sure I'd be doing what I was doing if my son had been the driver. Mm-hmm. And that one young man could be here today that survived it, because he'll tell you we were upside down, the vehicle was upside down. I crawled out, ended up having a concussion, ran for help, came back, tripped over the young lady because it was so dark. They thought she was dead, read her last rites, and she by a miracle survived it. The coroner called me back 3 days, I think it was, after Phil passed away, and he said, I've never done this in my career, but Mike, I grew up with Jay Jacobs, the AD at Auburn. My daughter was at Auburn when Philip was there, and I saw that you're Catholic and I'm Catholic, and I thought you might want to know this. I don't believe Philip knew the crash even occurred. We think he got whiplash and snapped his neck. But I will tell you this, we do believe he went out the passenger side window in the back from across, sitting behind the driver, and that due to his sheer size and condition and health, he probably helped protect the young lady that came out after him. But the young man, again, it's the power of the story, is the one young man that did a 2-second habit in his life. Even if he was drunk, he reached to his right shoulder, that passenger seat, and came down to his left hip. And he had to unbuckle the seatbelt to get out. And you go through all kinds of stats. I think the latest stat I have and what we're doing on road safety advocacy is 61% of the people that are dying on U.S. roadways weren't wearing a seatbelt. It's a 2-second habit. And I just told this audience of about 500 student athletes at Naperville Central High School last week, the Chicago area, don't tell me it's safer in the back seat, because my son was in the back seat and he's dead. Right? The driver wasn't wearing a seatbelt. He was found partially through the driver's door window. And on an accident report, he looks like a stick figure bent over with his name and DOA for dead on arrival.
Just a couple weeks after, just a number of weeks after he passed, I remember you and Mary stopping by my house, did a piece for Fox 6, wherever I was working then. It was Fox 6. And I guess you're watching Abby at a game. And right then I remember you in my kitchen, and it was shortly after you said, I said, how are you doing? You said, I need to do something to honor Philip, and I'm thinking of starting a foundation. I'm thinking of doing something, and that was the Lutze 43. So it was just a matter of days, weeks after that, you dove into that, and you have still been at it.
Yeah, again, we started this thing out, live like Lutz, love like Lutz, learn from Lutz. And when that BAC report came out, quite frankly, we went back into a dark hole like you wouldn't believe for about 48 hours, and I'm like, who am I to go talk in front of anybody at this point? And I'd already delivered a couple talks. High school football, Kennesaw State was just starting their football program. Brian Bohannon was a head coach. He's now at Georgia Tech. Got to see him last week when I talked to Tech. But Brian's big concern was that first year of football, which I've never understood. They couldn't play any games, and he was worried about every Thursday, Friday, Saturday is like a Saturday night home game when these kids have freedom to go do what college kids do, right? So I did that, and all of a sudden I jumped out of bed at like 2:30 in the morning, 2 days after this blood alcohol content report. Mary's like, what are you doing? I said, I got it. She's like, you got what? I said, I got it. It's live like Lutz, love like Lutz, and learn from Lutz. And that's the mantra now. And what we're doing is, I'll tell your audience, right, is to me, road safety comes down to three simple pillars. It's infrastructure of the roads, it's vehicles on the roads, and it's people driving those vehicles or using those roads. And, you know, we partner with Alabama DOT, the Georgia DOT. They're the experts on the infrastructure, where to put a roundabout in, where to put a rumble strip in. Unfortunately, based on data of deceased, where to reduce speed. They're the experts, and we partner with them. So we got the best of the best. And then vehicles, we got a great relationship with Kia. Kia Manufacturing and their sales team and dealerships, and we're doing some other stuff with trucking and transportation companies. So we're touching the vehicle thing, but our sweet spot is that people. It's the behavior of the people, and that's who I believe Philip's life and story, only 23 years on earth, was meant to say, how many lives can we go impact and save? And that's what gives you the energy to go do this.
Go through the. I'm sorry, Lars, real quick. Go through the before you click it, and the protocol that kids, teenagers, everybody should do one day.
Yeah, I should have probably brought a packet here. Got one off camera here, but what we did, he passes away June 14th or June 29th of 2014. And you get to the fall of 17, and I don't remember exactly who it was, but somebody said, are you satisfied with what you've done so far with the foundation? And are you concerned about Philip's relevancy? And it was a dynamic question I was always thinking about. I come from IBN, where you get a plan, you make it, it's bigger the next year. If you don't make it, you get a chance to fix it one time, or you get X out of the door at IBM. So I was happy with what we're doing, but always can do more. And then Philip's relevancy. I'll give you a perspective today. I will go back again this fall and speak at Auburn, where they've got a mandatory program called Auburn Man, where all first-year male Greek students have to go to a 6-week Monday from 6 to 7 series of speakers. I've typically become the de facto closeout speaker now. And I'll show a video, which Auburn Athletics created for Philip's memorial service. So it's 11 years old, and we've only edited it one time to put a couple shots of the vehicle in there. And I'll show that, and I've learned to ask the question now. 900 young men at Auburn, where Philip went to school and loved, and you now ask the question, raise your hand if you knew who Philip was before that video. And you're lucky if 5% of the hands go up. Really? So the relevancy thing is really real. I look a lot different now than I did 10 years ago as far as gray hair. You do get concerned. What does a high school student in Illinois want to hear from some 62-year-old guy about a kid they didn't even know, right? I think I did my math the other day. The 9th graders in this audience were some of them not even born when Philip passed away.
There is no question in my mind that you've saved lives. And I know that for a fact because I talked to students for that story, that 5,000-word piece that I wrote in Bleacher Report.
2018.
Yeah, and about how, and I want to get into that more in a second, but just about how your talk impacted them, and really you've helped so many people, and you're aware of that. But I want to go back to one thing, the BAC report. When I was researching the story, talked to experts, and if his BAC was as high as they said it was, it would have been physically impossible for Philip to walk and put himself into that car. And Philip was not a small man. So you can't imagine the kids lifting Philip into the car. With all that being said, do you feel like you have all the answers from his last night on Earth?
It's interesting, Lars. In 11 years, I've never really been asked the question in that vein. And my short answer is, I don't care. It doesn't change the story.
Yeah.
I get asked all the time, are you mad at your son? I said, no, I'm not mad at my son, but I'm so disappointed that he didn't get to that farm and say to everybody, give me your keys and don't follow me. You'll get your keys at 5 o'clock. Cause that's what I would have expected him to do. Cause that's who he was. But never been asked that in that vein. That's an interesting question. And I'm losing my track of thought, but I'm going to go back real quick so I can tell you exactly where I was at when your article was released. I was on I-20 from Birmingham going back to Atlanta, and I had Abby with me and a friend of hers, and I could see her in the back seat reading the article online and just tearing up. And she goes, "Why did you let him use that picture?" If you remember.
Oh my God. My God. I've never been so mad in my professional life as I was at that picture. What Bleacher Report did was reprehensible. I almost quit over that. They hired somebody to do a piece of art that would serve as sort of the lead photo of this 5,000 word story.
Which is a long story.
And it was so inappropriate. It was a gentle way to put it is, it's a kind of an abstract picture, but it's clearly Philip laying on the ground, and there's a bottle of booze in his hand and liquid spilling out.
Oh my gosh.
This
was their feature picture?
Disgusting. It was disgusting. And whatever editor at Bleacher Report approved that, I know it wasn't Bill Eichenberger, who was my own guy.
I remember
it was horrible. I want to apologize again.
I look back, and Abby was just beside herself. And then the oldest daughter I told you about that wanted to go choke everybody out, she was going to find out where you lived. And I said, "Hey, I talked to Lars. This wasn't his choice." I go, "You know what, guys?"
I didn't even know it.
Yeah, I goes,
"You send in the story."
I sent the story.
And I said, "You know what? I don't like it at all, but it's done, and maybe there's a reason God did it. Maybe there's something that's going to stick to somebody, but I don't have time to go chase that stuff, right? I got a bigger mission to do." So
good for you.
And I get, I also, I'm human and I'm a sinner, right? I also say, I don't have time to spend with some people I don't like because I don't have many years left.
Yeah.
But no, it's, you were down in Montgomery when you came to listen to that.
Yes.
The presentation, the talk, and I'd like to hope it's gotten better since you were down there back then.
Well, and then I drove over to Marietta. Spent, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours. I think it was just you and Mary.
Yep.
And, I've written a lot of tough stories over the years. At Sports Illustrated, I was kind of known as the tragedy guy. But after talking to you and Mary, driving back to Birmingham, for the first time in my career, only time in my career, I had to pull over. I had just had a son, April. We'd just given birth to Lincoln. And I had to stop in Anniston, and I literally stayed the night in Anniston, and I just pulled over and sobbed. Just hit me.
Yeah.
And also, that was the moment I knew I'm not leaving Mike and his family. Right? That's why, all these years later, you and I still talk, and I try to be as supportive as possible, but it just, the fundamental sadness was a tough one for me.
This is terrible. Now, a couple of months ago, I visited one of your deals, I think at Wallace State, or was that where I went? Oh.
Yeah, we were up at Wallace State Community College up in Huntsville and delivered our first 5-hour safe driving summit in Alabama through a partnership with the Alabama Department of Transportation. We've now delivered 28 of these in Georgia. We think they're very impactful events, but yeah, you were the MC for that event.
And breakout your meetings and the whole bit. And as Lars mentioned, you're pretty graphic to these kids. I mean, you're right up front. You tell it like it is, and that's by design, I would think.
It is. And again, I think over the course of the years, I've used the driver's name one time, the backseat passenger's name one time. I just don't use their names out of respect to their families.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Mary will text the driver who lost his life's mom every anniversary of the crash. So we'll text back and forth. Other than that, I don't use their names. I just out of respect. And to me, it's, guys, on a simple my face says, I'm not sure I'm in heaven yet, right? When the day comes, and boy, I want to get to that gate and see two people. I want to see God saying, you can come in, and or if God says, hold on a minute, we're still considering this. I want Philip to be there and say, come on, God, he's made some errors, but let him in. Part of it's to make my son proud. Part of it, like people probably say, I want you to, it's part of my grieving. People ask, how do you do this? And I said, well, it's, we still show that video, that's the original video, and Ann, our daughter that's in it, she's got tears streaming down her cheeks. And every time I see that, it just chokes you up. But I tell people, there's some days I don't want to do the talk. When I get somewhere, I don't want to do the talk, but I feel like I have to do the talk. And there's other days I can't wait to do it.
You know what?
This may sound weird to everybody, but my son hasn't changed what he looks like in the last 11 years. And on one hand, that's phenomenal. On the other hand, though, not knowing what he'd be doing and would he be married, would he be coaching, would he have kids? I tell people all the time, we still go, our kids are now getting older, so we miss the wedding stage where all their friends are getting married. But man, was it tough to go to these weddings and see the mother-son dance and watch Mary just well up because she never had that chance.
And you talk about emotion at that Wallace State gathering. He's speaking and he's telling it like it is to these hundreds of kids. Okay. And I'm on the stage and I look up and it's an auditorium. So, you're like, the steps go up. At the very top in the portal, I remember a shadow sitting just like this in the middle of the hallway. Just right there on the top step was Mike's wife, Mary. Yeah. So she goes to many of these with you.
She tries to get to the ones she can. She doesn't get to many of them, but she's a hell of a volunteer.
Wow.
And it's funny. Everybody thinks she's the sweetest, kindest woman. I honestly tell you, she's never sworn in her life. But behind closed doors, she's not that sweet. She yells at me a lot, but she'll get on kids.
Edit that one out.
She'll get on kids if they're not paying attention. Okay. And I'll be honest with you, I sometimes forget that she's in the room hearing this. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, I had a great call, so many great meetings already today, and a call over here at one of our board members and said, Bob, we need to get to the point. In November, I want you as a co-chair of the board to make sure we're putting a strategic plan meeting together because we haven't done that. And we're doing very well, financially solid and everything. But I'm going to do this till I'm 70, and I'm 62. Until somebody says it's not worth it, hopefully I will. But the goal is to have somebody come and run this foundation, and it's not going to be a family member, I'm pretty sure.
How do people participate? How do they donate? Is there a way to follow you and find out where you're speaking next?
Yeah. You can go to our website, which is lutzie43.org. I had give an example. I had a lunch or breakfast this morning, 8:00 at the Ritz-Carlton downtown Atlanta. I live in Marietta. And it was a woman that heard me speak of all places in Atlanta about 2 months ago at the 7th annual International Roundabout Conference. Let me say it again, Roundabout Conference.
The traffic.
So these are engineers across the world that are experts at building roundabouts. And my friends at GDOT called me and said, Mike, there's this big conference coming in town. They've got an opening for the end of day 3 main talk. I'd love you to co-deliver it with me. And I said, perfect. Yeah. And then Sam, who's an engineer, kind of conservative by nature, loves data, introverted, and says it's 90 minutes and I'm only going to take 15. So I had, an hour and 15 minutes, and I gave a version of the talk that I've always delivered called Philip's Legacy, What Legacy You're Leaving. And when you're done, everybody always comes up and shakes your hand or so forth. One woman walked up to me and said, my name's Karen Giese, with a company called Transoft. I live in Portland. We're headquartered in British Columbia. Mike, your story touched my heart that made me realize our company was very philanthropic in nature. We're forgetting about why we do what we do. It's the people that use the roadways. It's walkers, runners, bicyclists, motorcyclists, cars, and so forth. I think our company's going to want to get involved with you. So she was back in Atlanta today for a 3-day conference, and we had breakfast, and she brought another of her senior executives with, and it's Lutzie 43 Foundation. So I said to them, the easiest thing you could do is assume I'm just coming for a check because we're a nonprofit, and we'll take a check. But more importantly, we're doing something really cool with these summits. We're going to deliver our 30th summit on Thursday in Toccoa, Georgia, which is rural as you can get. It's 7 miles from South Carolina. and it's Stevens County High School. 1,000 kids will come in to an all-student hour and 15-minute presentation, and then 400 kids will go through these 4 30-minute breakouts. But it's the first time we've gone back to the same high school. And it's because the principal called and said, you were here last year. Can you come again? It was so impactful. And I said, yeah, great. We'll come back. GDOT's our partner on this. We'll go co-deliver it. And, but I'm telling Abby and our team, I love what we're doing. I know we're making an impact. It makes more of an impact when those kids, after we leave, have our 43 key second key and lanyard, and that key is meant to go around the rearview mirror and be that in-vehicle image that when you look at it, triggers a strong driving behavior. Mm-hmm. Like kids, put the phone down. And in Georgia right now, we're moving towards laws. Every state's going to probably get there where Stevens County, you have to be off your phone the entire day. All these kids have cell phones. I don't care what your socioeconomic upbringing is. They all have cell phones. And the principal said, we have just caused a new epidemic. These kids don't have their phones all day. What do you think they're doing before they drive out of the parking lot? They're driving one hand here. They're teens, so they're inexperienced, and one hand here. Mike, please address that during your talk. But I said, Abby, we need to create, for lack of a better term, what's a 43 key second campus? So this is the second high school that now is investing in it. They're putting 18 light poles in their parking lots, a 2 foot wide by 4 foot long, with the Stevens County High School logo on it, and then clear head, clear hands, clear eyes, click it, and a picture of the key. Mm. And they're putting a big windscreen on the football stadium fence. And Alpharetta High School is doing it in Metro Atlanta. So I've got a rural school and a Metro school doing it. And what Transoft we're trying to do is, I said, how you can help us right away is an in-kind contribution of your product and solution. They can put a camera up and capture data. And what they can capture is deceleration speed, acceleration speed, near misses of accidents or crashes. Hmm. And now we can get to the point where when somebody asks me the question, Mike, how do you know there's a return on investment in what you're doing? And my answer, not to be a smart aleck, is how do you measure something that doesn't happen?
Right. That's, yeah.
If we take that habitual 16-year-old that's an inexperienced driver that has their license now and is constantly on the phone, or that 17-year-old senior who says to his friends in the back seat, I don't want to get cussed out, so I'm not going to tell you to put your seatbelt down, but I wish you would. Or they become super speeders or show off how fast they get mom or dad's car going. If we can change that behavior and maybe save a life, how do you know? How do you measure that, right? I've told people before, drive safe Alabama. That's on a billboard. The only measurement you have right there is impressions. How many people drive by that? How do you know that's making a difference?
No.
So I got very graphic one time when some organization said, Mike, we really support Alzheimer's research. I'm not sure we can track how effective you are. And I said, there's no cure for Alzheimer's research or Alzheimer's. So how's that dollar going for you? And I don't mean to be rude. It's making progress, right? We're seeing improvements, but roadway deaths in the United States is an epidemic. And again, that's all we're trying to solve.
My final question is, it's been 11 years, 2 months roughly, since you had that conversation when you learned of Philip's passing and the electrifying pain of that moment. Has time dulled the intensity of the pain, or is it still as sharp as it was back then?
Yeah, again, another great question. I know why you're successful what you do. Does it dull it? Yes. What's the old saying? Time heals, yeah. Right? I don't know that we're healed. I have great confidence. My son's proud of us. Absolutely proud of us. I know he's going to give me a high five when I see him again. There's times where I have to wait to see him, right? There was a time when I'm like, I got 3 beautiful daughters and 3 grandkids now and a beautiful wife. It's not time for me to go anywhere, and I'll get to be with Philip at some point. But, I drove his truck over the weekend. We still have his truck. And my mechanic says, normally I would tell you don't fix that, but I know the purpose of this truck. So I still drive that truck. I don't know if dull's the right word. There's days where you're just more focused on it. I'm glad I'm beyond the years of why. I will tell you my tears are more of joy these days than they were. I was also raised by a tough guy. My dad passed away about 2 years ago, but he used to say crying's for a word I can't repeat to this audience. You just didn't show those emotions, right? And I said, Dad, that's such bad advice. I cry every day. Absolutely cry every day. It could be I'm going to go out to Tuscaloosa, and I guarantee you I'm out there. I'm going to go by that south end zone and where he made the game-winning touchdown, and I'm going to say this because I'm just a male intellect, right? It's an oxymoron. I'm going to say that's where the big tight end had the game-winning touchdown. And Abby, when she was a student there, forbid me to drive by there with her because she got tired of hearing it. But, yeah, it's not nearly as raw as it was. But I also believe we have a purpose in what we're doing. But I also know there's a lot of people that come up to you guys wouldn't believe this, right? But I just gave a talk in Tennessee to the American Association of Trauma Surgeons, Tennessee chapter. And why? Because we do these 5-hour safe driving summits, and one of the 30-minute breakouts is a reenactment of a teen going into an emergency room coming from a crash. And we don't believe it's scared straight, but in that emergency room, we set it up with 3 step-and repeats that show the inside of an emergency room, and there's all the equipment in there. And we have anywhere from 6 to 8 professional trauma personnel, including a surgeon. And, we go in there. I want these kids to see what's real. And, we had Erlanger Medical out of Chattanooga come to Fannin County over the mountain there in Georgia because we needed a trauma center group. And Dr. Bell, Chris Bell, said, Mike, this touched me in ways I've not been touched. And this gave me the energy back. We have to be advocates. We have to be out in the community being proactive, right? If you think about it, emergency room surgery, the majority of their career is reactive. And he's now wanting us to get summits into Tennessee. And he said, I need you to speak to all my peers at this conference. And I'm sitting there. He said, let's co-deliver this. Well, it was 30 minutes. He took 5. So I could tell our story, but I said, hey, I'm just sitting here. I'm the smartest guy in the world, but you spend most of your life reactive in your profession. I think my son's going to give you a reason to be proactive and go out and educate. So what's really cool to me is the lead surgeon from Vanderbilt Medical Center grabbed me and said, I've been touched. We're going to work with you. And,
Wow.
and they don't know. They might find out if they watch your podcast now, but we've got this kind of cool little competition. Is it going to be Vanderbilt Medical Center or Erlanger Healthcare that's going to get us to Tennessee for the first time? So these summits we've built that can be going state to state.
Yeah. My final thought is you've spoken at length today, and I can see your love for your son, and we kind of have gotten to peer behind your heart and what you're feeling. How is Mary doing, and how are your daughters doing? And,
I say this analogy that's been said many times before, and I don't say it in jest. I outpunted my coverage. I've known my wife since we were 8 years old. We didn't go to school together until high school. It took me the full freshman year of knowing I wanted to date her, but not having the courage to ask her, to finally ask her September 6th of my sophomore year, and really have never been on another date or kissed another girl. And we'll be married 40 years in October.
for you.
She is my rock. Without her, I don't do this foundation. She supports it in so many ways. In a roundabout way, be a part of it, right? And we're waiting for her to retire in a couple of years from her nursing career. She'll jump into this foundation with us. God did it set her back. It aged her. She just, again, that was her boy. 6'5", 255, but man, he was like just a little boy in her arms. He just swallowed her up. Mary's little, right? And yeah, it's been hard to watch her go through that, but man, does she love her grandkids and love her daughters, and she's still the rock that she's always been. But it was hard watching that.
Yeah.
Well, you are to be admired, and we love you. We love your family.
Question,
too. Matt.
and I am not in any way taking away from your impactful thoughts here, but you've spoken about it, and I'm really not serious. Do roundabouts really work?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, and here's how I'll answer it. We're trying to do stuff in South Carolina DOT. We don't get with the communication teams and a lot of. I better not go that route. We work on the engineering side. So I give an analogy. I worked at IBM. If you wanted to use a comm team or a marketing team, they were there to support you to hit your goal, to make your numbers, right, drive your business. So we typically work on the engineering side. And as a gentleman, Duncan Smith, I love his personality up in South Carolina DOT. And he prefaces this very strongly. He goes, Mike, I'm going to say something to you. Please take it in the right context because I know you lost your son. But you asked the question. If we watch an intersection and we have multiple deaths there, we've got to do something to fix that. So what we can do is go and put a roundabout in. It slows the traffic down. They're proven to work. And Mike, if it costs me $8 million to put that roundabout in, and over the next 12-month period, I don't have a death, that's an $8 million return on investment.
Didn't they do work?
They do. They do. And again, we're seeing more and more of them come up in Atlanta.
Go down to Sickert Hollow and Blue Lake Road here in Birmingham.
Yep.
It works beautifully.
But yeah, I mean,
Brand
if you were to ask me that I'm going to go speak at, let me just kind of recap with this. In a matter of a 2-week period, I spoke up in Tennessee on a Thursday to a group of trauma surgeons. Jumped out of flight out of Nashville to go to Tampa to speak at a company called Convergent. It has 5,800 employees. And this is for your audience who can make a difference in their companies. 10,000 plus employees, $3 billion in revenue, 5,800 vehicles go on the road every day. The typical vehicle is a 9,200-pound pickup or van loaded with equipment. What they do is they install fire and security systems. A lot of their training, as a couple of the drivers described to me, Mike, there was so much emphasis on wearing this 60-pound weight belt, how to go up a ladder and down a ladder at a customer site safely. But they started to see more and more of fender benders, and it was because these technicians were on the phone. So our 43 Key Seconds initiative has now been deployed across all these vehicles. So when they get in that vehicle, they now see a decal that has their logo Convergent, our logo, our key, and the countdown as a constant reminder to make better choices. And to give you a perspective, up in Baltimore at a town hall meeting, I spoke up there in April, and I asked the branch manager, who's a profit and loss employee, right? He's got to run the numbers to make his bonus, maximize his income. I said, how have you been doing year to date as far as company vehicles in accidents? He said, geez, Mike, we've already had about $17,000 worth of incidences. So fender bender bumped into something, whatever. I said, well, if you extrapolate the course of the year, you're talking roughly about 50,000. He goes, and his immediate response was, that's an employable position. That's an employable position. So I know we're making a difference from that standpoint. But, so I went to Tampa to talk to their company, their town hall. And it's so funny. I did the same question at the trauma group, very different person at Convergent. Then I asked the same question to Brent Key and his football team the next Wednesday at Georgia Tech, where I've spoken 3 years in a row, and did it last Thursday at Naperville Central High School. I'm going to start with 3 questions before I really get into what I want to share with you. The first question is, and none of this alligator arms, I'm looking at Brent Key, the head coach at Tech, who's as tough as they come. I did this 3 years ago. I said, raise your hand if you've been a distracted driver in the last week. Brent Key sitting at first row 3 years ago, and he's like this. I said, hold on a minute, Brent, that's not you. Let me rephrase this. I need to see hands up high. He put his hand up as high as it could go. Yep. Trauma surgeons did it, and so forth. The kids did it, Naperville Central High School, Georgia Tech football players, Convergent employees. I said, the follow-up question is, raise your hand in the last week if you haven't worn a seatbelt. Any position in a vehicle. And again, you get this all the time. You get,
Yep.
right? I said, front seat, back seat. In fact, at one of the Convergent town halls I spoke at, I said, let me ask this question I've never asked before. Those of you put your hand up that you wear your seatbelt or didn't put your hand up, wearing a Convergent uniform, raise your hand if you drive your own vehicle and don't wear a seatbelt. I bet you were 7 hands up in an audience of 150. And I'll be honest with you, I started laughing. I go, you got to be kidding me. You wear it because you're supposed to at work and you get in trouble, but you don't wear it in your own life. Well, let me jump ahead. 61% of roadway fatalities, people are dying not wearing a seatbelt. Mm-hmm. So if I get any audience one message, wear your seatbelt. I wouldn't be in your room most likely if Philip had a seatbelt on. Statistically, he would have been alive. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
you want real quick, for students, teenagers, parents of teenagers, everybody, you want that cell phone. I mean, the parents will say, I need it on in case I have an emergency. You want the kid to leave it on, put it in the glove box, turn it off. Where do you want that cell phone?
Well, in Alabama's this way. Georgia beat them to it. South Carolina is just becoming this way later this year. It's a hands-free state. I mean, that phone by definition cannot be on your body.
Gotcha.
Right. But the experts should tell you if you want to be real safe, put the phone in your trunk if you have one or your glove compartment. Okay. But it shouldn't be touched. But I saw a young lady today pass me on I-20 from Atlanta to Birmingham. She was in the left lane. She had to have been going 78 miles an hour. She passed me in the middle lane, and what was she doing? Her phone was on a dashboard mount, but she was as she was driving.
Oh, she was
yeah. So I don't know. So yeah, I mean that's we're just trying to say wear seatbelts, don't be super speeders, don't be just again clear head, clear hands, clear eyes. So what's a clear head? You shouldn't be driving if you're alcohol impaired, drug impaired, technology impaired, emotionally impaired, or fatigued. So that's that. We think if more and more people will follow that, we're going to save a lot of lives.
Yeah. Michael, I know that, like you said, you can't put the numbers on it, but you have saved lives. And I know you should be very much admired.
And inspired along the way.
Inspired too. Well, you're doing God's work, and we love you, love your family, and we loved your son. I interviewed him many times as a sports anchor. He's always very classy and very upbeat and very nice. We miss him, and we appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you for the great opportunity, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you driving over.
Oh, man.
Lutzie43.org, correct?
Yep.
Or is it Lutzie 43 Foundation?
Nope. Lutzie, LUTZIE43.org.
Lutzie43.
Make a donation. You can pray for us. You can help us come into your company, come into your school, your kids' schools. There's a lot of things we can do we think can help make a difference.
And they can put their seatbelt on.
That's right.
There you go.
Wear your seatbelt.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, guys.
That's good. That was very good. Thank you.